Welcome back to Java Space. In this video, we are going to talk about Spring AOP terminologies. So in the previous videos, we talked about quite a number of things, of which you might have heard some big words coming into the picture, nomenclature. You might have heard point cards, advices, aspects, and all that. And we have dedicated this video to try and explain all those big words. So the first thing is an aspect. So a modularization of a concern that cuts across multiple classes. That's a complete definition of an aspect. And in a Spring AOP, an aspect is simply a class that has been annotated with an aspect annotation. The minute you annotate your class with an aspect, that is an aspect. And inside that class, obviously, you will have a code that cuts across multiple places in your application. Then we have a join point, which is nothing but a point during the execution of a program, such as the execution of a method or the handling of an exception. And in Spring AOP, a join point always represents a method execution. That's a join point. Then we have an advice. So an advice is the action that you take in that particular join point or in that particular method. The action there that you take, that becomes an advice. So many AOP frameworks, including Spring, model an advice as an interceptor, maintaining a chain of interceptors around the join point. Then you have what we call a Pointcut. So a Pointcut is nothing but an expression that defines a join point. So if you define an expression, and that expression, it's like you are giving directions, or yes, someone wants to go to the mall and you give them direction. Those directions now translates to point cards, because those directions, if at the end of the day or eventually, they leads you to a particular destination, and that destination then becomes a join point. So advice is associated with a point card expression. That means that if you want to perform an advice, which in the previous slide we say it's an action, you must know where to perform that action. So an advice is always associated with a point card expression and runs at any join point matched by the point card. For example, the execution of a method with a certain name, that could be a point card expression. Then we have the concept of join points as matched by the point card expressions is central to AOP, and Spring uses the aspect point card expression language by default. Target object. Object that is being advised by one or more aspects is referred to as a target object. So for instance, let's talk about the example that I made earlier in one of the videos, that someone wants to transfer money from one account to another account, and we want to perform some validation. So the object where that method resides, it becomes our target object, because we want to intercept the execution of that method. So where that method resides becomes our target object. And this object is also called an advised object. So since Spring AOP is implemented using runtime proxies, this object will always be a proxied object. So AOP proxy is an object that is created by the AOP framework in order to implement the aspect. So this object, you cannot see the code, but it's created for you at runtime. And then now it wraps around the target, which is the object we want to advise. And then now the calls that should go to the target have to pass through the proxy, and the proxy will do some work, then delegate the call to the target object. So in Spring Framework, an AOP proxy will be a JDK dynamic proxy or a CGLib proxy. And the difference between these two is that a JDK dynamic proxy is only created if the Pointcut expression resides in an object that implements one or more interface. Then in that way, Spring by default will generate a JDK dynamic proxy. And this JDK dynamic proxy, as I have explained, it's not a Spring concept, it's a Java concept. Then we have CGLib proxy, which would be created if the code where the Pointcut expression resides, that object or that class does not implement one or more interface. Then the proxied object would have to extend that target class and then do some magic.